To help her young boyfriend gild his credentials and fast-track his promotion, the dean's wife ran over my leg with her car, severing it, and stole the pancreatic cancer surgery protocol I had painstakingly prepared for my patients. On the day my right leg was amputated, she was busy hosting a celebratory banquet for her young boyfriend. Consequently, the boyfriend performed surgery while intoxicated, causing a patient to die instantly on the operating table. To protect him, the wife deliberately altered the surgical protocol, framing my supposedly inadequate protocol as the cause of this catastrophic medical incident. To demonstrate her righteous impartiality, she immediately demoted me, slashed my salary, and confiscated 30 years' future wages as compensation to the victim's family. In the conference room, she lowered her head and counseled, "Your actual skills remain unquestioned. This was merely an unfortunate surgical accident. At worst, you'd face temporary suspension pending investigation. People forget quickly. But Ziqian is different. He's still young and inexperienced. This incident would forever bar him from practicing medicine." Hearing this, I nodded. The wife assumed my compliance, gleefully promising to publicly acknowledge our marital relationship after resolving this matter. I smiled faintly. "I've already filed a report with the Medical Affairs Department. Let the professionals decide what's right and wrong." As the words fell, my wife Jiang Wanqing's face darkened. Colleagues stared at me in shock, never expecting me to confront directly. Their gazes shifted to the young intern Yang Ziqian, my wife's secret lover. Yang Ziqian panicked momentarily upon seeing this. Suddenly kneeling, he grasped Jiang Wanqing's pant leg while weeping and wailing. "Sister Wanqing, the professor revised the treatment plan for the patient's sake. Please don't blame him. It's my lack of skill. I'll resign immediately and apologize to the deceased family." Jiang Wanqing helped him up tenderly, her voice soft with consolation. "Ziqian, don't underestimate yourself. Your talent is evident to all. This whole mess is Su Linchuan's fault, too old to be competent, yet abusing his authority to force you to implement an immature treatment plan. That's what caused this severe medical malpractice." With just a few simple words, she completely absolved Yang Ziqian, making him appear like an innocent, inexperienced boy who knew nothing. Everything was blamed on me, his wicked mentor. Yang Ziqian's lackey immediately jumped out to accuse me. "You Su, isn't this too coincidental? You became unable to operate after having an accident, and then Ziqian, who took over your surgery, makes a major mistake facing expulsion. You didn't intentionally break your own leg to make Ziqian take over this problematic surgery and force him out in broad daylight, did you?" The entire room gasped in sh. "Ach." Yang Ziqian waved his hands hurriedly. "No way. Minter has always been so good to me. Why would he frame me? Besides, what would he gain from doing this?" The lackey lamented his naivety. "Ziqian, you're too simple-minded. He's already got you cornered, yet you still believe he's a good person? Everyone in this hospital knows Su Linchuan secretly loves the director, but the director is your girlfriend. Only when you're gone can he have a chance to steal her from you." Seeing the gossipy expressions on everyone's faces, Yang Ziqian looked at Jiang Wanqing with red-rimmed eyes. "Everyone's mistaken. Sister Wanqing and I have no special relationship. Sister Wanqing is..." Jiang Wanqing shook her head to interrupt him, then glanced at me apologetically. "Enough. The matter of Su Linchuan's crush on me was already addressed during the last meeting. Right now we're discussing who should take responsibility for the surgical error." At her reprimand, the person who spoke earlier fell silent and obediently sat down, causing no more trouble. Yet I found no joy in this outcome. While appearing to defend me, Jiang Wanqing had inadvertently confirmed the rumor of me being the third party. But the truth was, we'd been married for 10 years. It was her who suggested keeping it secret, claiming office romances invite gossip. The colleagues only started noticing something when she fainted from illness last time. I carried her to the hospital and anxiously watched over her for 3 days and 2 nights. It was after seeing my devoted care that the affair rumors began circulating. As a result, after Jiang Wanqing woke up, instead of being moved, she scolded me for not being mindful of appearances at the hospital. She even specially convened a meeting to harshly criticize my actions, immediately revoking my appraisal qualifications and year-end bonus. At that time, although I was resentful, I still prioritized her career above all else, accepting both the accusations and punishments. But now, as rumors about her and Yang Ziqian spread like wildfire, she not only ignores them, but also prevents Yang Ziqian from explaining. This contrasting approach shows who the true love is, as clear as day. With a thud, Yang Ziqian knelt on the ground again. "I was the chief surgeon. It's all my fault. I'll go apologize to the family immediately. Even if they cut me into 1,000 pieces, I'll accept my fate." Jiang Wanqing instantly panicked, pulling him up once more while glaring at me. "Su Linchuan, can't you learn from Ziqian? Though young, he shows such responsibility. When will you, the prime culprit, stop hiding?" Clearly, it was her attempt to promote Yang Ziqian, repeatedly snatching surgeries to pad his credentials. This time they targeted my pancreatic cancer surgical plan that could reduce postoperative complications for patients. I knew Yang Ziqian's Suji. Cal skills were poor. No matter how Jiang Wanqing cajoled, threatened, or tempted me, I refused to hand it over. A few days ago, Jiang Wanqing suddenly requested a meeting, admitting her mistakes and apologizing, asking only to have Yang Ziqian join as a minor assistant. To avoid conflict, I agreed, never expecting it to be a carefully arranged trap. She deliberately ran over my leg with her car, then returned to hospital with Yang Ziqian while ignoring my bloodied and mangled leg, publicly declaring I'd suffered an accidental car crash rendering me unfit to operate. She transferred both my patient and surgical plan to Yang Ziqian. To ensure surgical success, Jiang Wanqing even assigned him several competent assistants. Yet Yang Ziqian grew overconfident, holding a premature victory celebration and showing up reeking of alcohol on the operating table the next day. Before the plan could even be implemented, errors caused the patient to suffer massive hemorrhage and die instantly on the operating table. Now, not only does she show no remorse, she even altered my protocol without authorization and pinned all the blame on me. This time, I didn't indulge her. I spoke up directly. My protocol was flawless. Yang Ziqian consumed alcohol before the surgery. The entire room was stunned, all eyes turning toward Yang Ziqian. Tears of grievance welled in Yang Ziqian's eyes as he nodded with resignation the next second. Whatever teacher says must be true. Sister Wanqing, just publicly announce I was drinking. Let me alone bear the consequences of this accident. After all, I'm just an unknown junior doctor. Teacher is a renowned expert and the hospital's pillar. He must remain untarnished. With these few words, he redirected all accusations toward me again. Jiang Wanqing even tenderly wiped his tears, declaring with feigned righteousness, Ziqian, you did nothing wrong. I won't sacrifice you to save face. I also want to inform everyone present, the hospital will not push anyone out to take the blame. Every individual is the hospital's most valuable asset, and I will treat everyone equally. Young doctors burst into cheers, while older ones forced perfunctory claps to conform. Seeing the situation settled, Jiang Wanqing breathed a sigh of relief. Fearing I might make more shocking statements, she declared I wasn't fully recovered yet and adjourned the meeting. When she wheeled me back to the ward, and we were finally alone, she helped me lie down with a sigh. I know this was humiliating for you today, but please help Ziqian through this crisis in consideration of my father's past support for you. Make any demand you wish. Even if you want to leave an heir for your family, I can bear you a child. Take your time to consider what you want. I won't disturb your recovery now. She tucked me in and left without looking back. Watching her retreating figure, I didn't tell her that the story about her father sponsoring me was just a white lie I'd concocted. 10 years ago, Jiang Wanqing's family encountered disaster when their hospital faced bankruptcy, urgently needing to cultivate the reputation of a genius doctor to salvage the situation. Her father, knowing I loved Jiang Wanqing, begged me to stay, marry her, and help rebuild their foundation. At that time she was still kind-hearted, refusing to drag me down, urging me to seek other opportunities rather than sacrifice my future for her sake. That's why I lied to her, saying her father had funded me, and I was here to repay the favor. As she hesitated, she gripped my hand in return and stepped into the marriage altar with me. Over these 10 years, while our relationship wasn't grand passion, there was always steadfast respect and harmony. I'd assumed our peaceful routine would last forever, until Yang Ziqian appeared, and our constant arguments began. The same little director Jiang who once cried all night over failing to save a patient now disregards human lives for a man, and cost me a leg. She didn't realize this false marriage ended the moment her car mercilessly ran over me. The phone chimed with an incoming notification. The report has been accepted. The medical department has dispatched specialists to initiate investigation. Not long after I lay down, my phone kept buzzing. Nurses murmured regretfully during rounds. Yang Ziqian really went public with the director. What about Dr. Su? He's been secretly in love with her for 10 years, turned down so many big hospital offers for her, yet got beaten by a newcomer who just arrived last year. They pulled open the curtain indignantly, meeting my eyes watching videos, froze awkwardly, then hastily corrected. Dr. Su, don't be sad. I kept staring at my phone, head lowered. In the video, Yang Ziqian was holding a cheap silver ring, kneeling in the cafeteria, filled with people to confess to Jiang Wanqing. The usually unapproachable Jiang Wanqing blushed shyly at this moment. She gave a slight nod and slipped the ring onto her finger amid cheers of celebration. I silently turned off my phone and shook my head. It's fine. I'm not upset. The nurse, seeing I was genuinely unaffected, smiled. Dr. Su, you finally let it go. There are plenty of younger and prettier women in the hospital. Why insist on clinging to one tree? What kind of girl do you like? We can all introduce you to. As they spoke, Jiang Wanqing stormed in with a dark expression. Chatting during work hours? All of you, performance bonuses for this month will all be deducted. The nurses fled in panic. I looked up at her. The youngsters didn't know any better, but your punishment is too harsh. Jiang Wanqing remained stern, still angry. That's exactly why they need to learn. Light punishments won't make them remember. I sneered. Is that right? Last time Yang Ziqian misdiagnosed a patient and cut out their stomach. You said humans make mistakes and that young people need opportunities to grow, then promoted him with a raise as encouragement. Not to mention when I saved a patient on the street and got recognized in the media as a good Samaritan. But Jiang Wanqing docked 6 months of my performance bonuses for being half an hour late, calling it absenteeism, to set an example. Others spoke up for me. She insisted, rules make institutions work, claiming that without severe punishment, everyone would follow suit and treat the hospital as a joke. She's the one who demands strictness, yet bends the rules for Yang Ziqian. She gets to play both sides of every argument. Such double standards. Jiang Wanqing, losing the argument, snorted coldly. Ziqian is sensible and doesn't make me worry. Naturally, I need less supervision. Now she's feeding me these nonsensical excuses. Pathetic. Or is it just special treatment for your boyfriend? Oh wait, you've accepted his proposal. Should start calling him fiancé now. Jiang Wanqing's face darkened. What are you being so sarcastic about? You've been married for so many years, and you never even bought a ring to make me happy. Ziqian is thoughtful. Seeing me in low spirits, he kindly tried to cheer me up, but to be misunderstood by someone like you. This is truly disheartening. I scoffed lightly, not bothering to argue with her. I had spent all my savings to buy her a diamond ring back then, but she insisted, what does a doctor need a ring for? And forced me to return it. Now she says I never bought her one. Just as Jiang Wanqing was about to say more, her phone suddenly rang. A flicker of delight instantly crossed her face. Clearly, the message was from Yang Ziqian. Going for steak again today? Let's have something vegetarian. I'm already old enough. If I keep gaining weight, I'll be too ashamed to show my face outside. Her finger tapped lightly, and Ziqian's voice message began playing aloud. Sister Wanqing, you're as beautiful as a flower. You look as young as my own sister. Whoever dares call you old, I'll go beat them up right now. Jiang Wanqing covered her mouth, her laughter trembling like blossoming branches. Seeing her like this, I handed her the prepared divorce agreement. Sign it before we talk. She took the documents but kept her eyes fixed on her screen, thinking I was asking for favors. If you'd come to your senses earlier, there wouldn't have been all this trouble. What document is this? Requiring a signature? Looks quite formal. I said flatly. The divorce papers. Thud. Jiang Wanqing's pen fell to the ground. Her eyes widened as she hastily hid the documents, hissing angrily. Are you insane? We're in a hospital. If people find out about our relationship, how ridiculous would it be for a hospital director like me to be involved in a scandal? Yet she accepted Yang Ziqian's public marriage proposal without hesitation. All this talk, it's just because I'm not good enough for you. Sign it, and you can be with Yang Ziqian openly. Thinking I was jealous about the proposal, Jiang Wanqing rubbed her temples and explained impatiently. If I and Ziqian were just normal superior-subordinate relationship. If you insist on thinking that way, there's nothing I can do. I've vomited hearing this excuse countless times. Yeah, I misunderstood. Happy now? Jiang Wanqing glared. I'm talking to you properly. What's with this attitude? Absurd. When we argue, she says I'm being unreasonable. When I agree with her words, she says I have bad attitude. So hard to please. I collapsed onto the bed, pulled the covers over my head. Out of sight, out of mind. She stamped her foot, then seemed to remember something. Tempering her anger, she pressed on the narrow single bed and softened her tone. This bed's too small, the environment sucks too. I'll transfer you to VIP ward. I threw off the blanket, looking at her strangely. From my injury to amputation, she never cared. Now what's gotten into her? Is this her way of apologizing? The corners of Jiang Wanqing's mouth lifted in a faint smile as she said gently. Since you're sick anyway, why not give this field study opportunity to Yang Ziqian? It'll be good for him to lay low for a while too. I should have known. Why would she suddenly start caring about me? It was all about clearing the path for Yang Ziqian's future. I sneered. No, I have many students. Even if the spot goes to the worst student, it won't be given to a murderer. Jiang Wanqing's smile vanished instantly. Her repeated attempts to humble herself before me today had been rejected, and now she completely lost her temper. Are you insane? I wanted to give you one last chance, but since you refuse it, get the hell out of this hospital. A cripple playing doctor? Go home and do laundry and cooking. That's all a live-in son-in-law is good for. She stormed off in a huff. I didn't pay her any mind and buried myself in sleep. The next day when I opened my eyes, I saw Yang Ziqian standing before me holding a cup of water. With a gentle smile, he whispered, Professor, let me share a secret. I deliberately caused the surgery to fail. I just wanted to see who Sister Wanqing would protect. As expected, I was right. Sister Wanqing has never stood by your side. What a pity that a genius of a generation has fallen like this. I had thought it was an accident, but it turned out he did it deliberately. I glared at him. That was a human life. Yang Ziqian still wore that gentle smile. I didn't want her to die either, but back then, when I asked Wanqing Jie to crush your hand, she couldn't bring herself to ruin your future and chose to crush your leg instead. Since Wanqing Jie is too soft-hearted to do what needs to be done, I have to give her a push. Don't you agree, teacher? What a devil. I was about to take further action, but before I could react, he suddenly screamed and fell to the ground. The glass in his hand shattered, and he pretended to inadvertently press his hand onto the shards. At that moment, Jiang Wanqing walked in carrying breakfast. Seeing this scene, she immediately dropped the food, rushed to Yang Ziqian, and asked anxiously, "What happened?" Yang Ziqian whimpered pitifully. "Wanqing Jie, I just wanted to comfort teacher. I didn't mean to upset them. If you're angry, teacher, you can scold me or hit me. But why did you have to ruin my future?" He knelt and crawled despairingly on the floor, weeping. Jiang Wanqing instantly flew into rage when she saw the blood on his hand. "Su Linchuan, how vicious of you to ruin someone's future." She mindlessly threw accusations at me without considering how a bedridden patient could possibly push down a grown man. Yang Ziqian's injury was just a minor scratch that would heal without treatment. Yet Jiang Wanqing acted as if his hand had been crippled. She violently dragged me off the bed. "You made Ziqian get hurt. I'll break your hand to give him justice." Nurses nearby rushed to intervene upon hearing the commotion. "Director Jiang, please calm down." Although my arm wasn't twisted, my unhealed stitches slammed hard against the floor, leaving me deathly pale and speechless from pain. "No, you must pay the price for ruining someone's future." Jiang Wanqing continued to press, grabbing my hand, trying to force it down again. Suddenly, someone shouted in panic, "Chief, the deceased family is here with people." Only then did Jiang Wanqing release her grip. The scene fell silent as she glared coldly at me. "I originally wanted to help mediate the relationship. Since you're so ungrateful, go kneel and apologize to the family yourself." The nurses turned pale. "The family has brought quite a few people. It's better for Dr. Su to avoid them first and discuss things once the family calms down." "Right. Dr. Su's current condition isn't suitable for handling patient relations either." Jiang Wanqing snorted coldly. He had the strength to ruin someone's future. What's so hard about kneeling and kowtowing to apologize? Amid the chaos, the family members entered with their group. Everyone held their breath. Only Jiang Wanqing pointed at me with venomous expression. "Mother of Xiaoqing, this is the murderer who killed your daughter." The family member glanced at me, but pointed at Yang Ziqian with hatred. "You're lying." The lead surgeon was obviously Yang Ziqian. Seeing the family's emotions turning hostile, Jiang Wanqing immediately shielded Yang Ziqian with nervous tension. Though he was the surgeon in charge, the root cause was Su Linchuan's flawed treatment plan that triggered the accident. She thought this could divert the conflict, but the family member didn't pay her any mind. "No, Dr. Su is a good doctor. It was the hospital's last-minute change of surgeons. It was Yang Ziqian's drinking during surgery that led to my daughter's death. I am not here to cause trouble today, but to seek justice for my daughter." Behind them, someone from the medical department stepped forward. "Yang Ziqian operated while intoxicated, violating discipline. We need to take him in for investigation." Jiang Wanqing was just about to shield Yang Ziqian. The next second, the police arrived. "Jiang Wanqing, you're suspected of intentional murder. Come with us." Seeing the police arrive as well, Jiang Wanqing was instantly stunned, even forgetting to protect Yang Ziqian. She arched her eyebrows and asked with patience and good temper, "Officers, there must be some mistake. I'm a law-abiding citizen. How could I possibly do something like murder?" Just as one commotion settled, another arose. The previously noisy hospital room became quiet again. The nurses who had been defending me earlier were now whispering and murmuring. Yang Ziqian pulled on Jiang Wanqing's sleeve and glanced worriedly at me, who was being supported against the bed edge. "Sister Wanqing, could it have been Dr. Su?" Jiang Wanqing looked at me and immediately shook her head in denial. "Impossible. He would never do anything that would harm me." Hearing this, I managed a bitter smile. But that was the past. In those days, I would bear any hardship and take any blame to protect her interests and dignity. These matters were witnessed by all through shed tears. When everyone learned of my secret affection for Jiang Wanqing, many friends exasperatedly admonished me not to foolishly abandon my future and disregard my reputation for a woman. Eventually, it would lead to a miserable end. Back then, I would just smile and brush off such comments. I believe they didn't understand. Jiang Wanqing was my wife, the person who would spend the rest of her life with me. We were one entity. Helping her was helping myself. That was perfectly normal. But only now, after experiencing so much, have I realized how laughable my thoughts were. What I considered marital devotion, Jiang Wanqing never showed the slightest consideration for. Framing me, car assault. Now, for Yang Ziqian's absurd frame-up, she wants to destroy these hands that heal and save lives. She's an utterly cold and selfish person, never showing any regard for past sentiment. Clenching my teeth against the pain, I struggled to prop myself up. I was the one who called the police. Jiang Wanqing's eyes instantly widened as she pointed at me in disbelief. After long deliberation, she finally erupted in rage. Are you insane? You actually called the police. You lunatic. This will ruin me. She pointed at me, spitting accusations. I sneered. What on earth did I ever love about this person who shirks responsibility? Just looking back now makes me sick. How amusing. You literally ran over my leg with a car to help Yang Ziqian steal a project. I'm merely exercising my legal rights. Stop your hysterics. Jiang Wanqing stomped her foot in frustration, grinding her teeth as if confronting an incorrigible child. Su Linchuan, you're still hung up on this jealousy? Didn't I already apologize? You're a grown man. Is this petty grudge worth clinging to? And besides, this is family business. Couldn't we have settled this privately instead of airing our family's dirty laundry? You're an adult now. Can't you stop acting childish? Petty? I looked at my still painful leg. My lower leg was empty. The amputation wound had torn open from Jiang Wanqing's previous act of violence, and blood had soaked through the bandages. The hardest part of amputation isn't the pain during recovery, but living a lifetime missing a limb. Even if I could afford the best prosthetic later, it could never compare to having my own leg. Even when proficient with prosthetics, while appearing to walk normally, phantom limb pain becomes a lifelong companion. Not to mention how grueling the recovery and adjustment periods would be. It's uncertain whether I'll ever stand again, let alone practice medicine. And to her, this degree of harm is merely a trivial matter? The incident that left me disabled wasn't even as important as saving her reputation? Is this the woman I've loved and protected for 10 years? Ridiculous. Even a dog would show more loyalty to its master. Hearing her outrageous remarks, even the police officer couldn't hold back. You're a grown adult? How can you not know that causing someone's disability through a collision is illegal? How dare you spout such nonsense in front of us? Facing the police, Jiang Wanqing toned down her domineering demeanor but still appeared defiant. Su Linchuan and I are married. This was just a minor game between spouses. Do you have nothing better to do than meddle in our private affairs? Her words only fueled the officer's fury. Your relationship doesn't matter. This is attempted murder. A marriage certificate isn't a license to commit crimes. Bystanders gasped in shock. Some colleagues urgently typed in chat groups, sharing the explosive drama in real time. Many patients, less restrained, immediately began discussing. Jiang Wanqing and Dr. Su are married? Wasn't it just Dr. Su's unrequited crush all along? Exactly. The director just accepted Yang Ziqian's marriage proposal yesterday. I even ate the wedding candies Dr. Yang distributed. But turns out the director's Dr. Su was already married. Then what is Dr. Yang? She looks so innocent and presentable. Who would have imagined she'd engage in something as vile as meddling in someone's marriage? No wonder Dr. Su kept getting upset about the director favoring Dr. Yang. We thought he was just sticking to principles. I even advised him not to clash with the director's boyfriend. So this is the truth. Of course, Dr. Su has been looking gloomy every day lately. Who wouldn't feel terrible seeing their wife clinging to some young stud all day? Dr. Su's tolerance is astonishing. I've seen the director and Dr. Yang share meals in the cafeteria multiple times, using the same chopsticks, drinking from the same cup, acting like lovers. Yang Ziqian really is shameless. Not even avoiding when poaching someone's spouse, openly provoking. Dr. Su is so pitiful. If it were someone with a worse temper, he'd have been beaten up already. They're clearly bullying Dr. Su because of his good upbringing. I have excellent relationships in the hospital. Both colleagues and patients are protective of me. Now everyone was cursing at Yang Ziqian with profanities. Since Yang Ziqian climbed onto Jiang Wanqing's high branch, he had been flattered and protected everywhere. This was the first time he got publicly criticized by so many people. His expression immediately darkened. He looked at Jiang Wanqing with aggrieved eyes, begging her to stand up for him. After all, if he were to speak up himself, his well-behaved character persona would collapse. In the past, Jiang Wanqing would have protected him without hesitation. But now, Jiang Wanqing was struggling to protect herself, completely oblivious to Yang Ziqian's petty calculations. She looked straight at me, her eyes holding a hint of panic, yet still maintaining that faint lingering haughtiness she always showed me. Su Linchuan, as long as you drop the case, I'll let bygones be bygones regarding how you've hurt me these past days. Otherwise, we'll divorce. You wouldn't want to betray my father's kindness and our 10 years of marital bonds, would you? At this critical juncture, all she could dredge up from racking her brains to win me back were these two things, debts of gratitude and marital ties. After all, Over the past decade, she'd been basking in my devotion without ever considering reciprocation, not even a single meal or gift in return. She truly had no other means left to regain my affection. I smirked, producing the divorce agreement she'd hidden away. Using divorce as a threat? Have you forgotten? I had you sign this long ago. You were the one delaying it. Since you're also willing to divorce now, then sign it. Let's part amicably, and you can face your deserved retribution. Jiang Wanqing widened her eyes and slapped the divorce papers away, shedding her form. Her composed demeanor, she screamed like an unscrupulous shrew. You still owe me the debt of gratitude for my father's sponsorship. You wish to divorce? Never. I shook my head and told her. Jiang Wanqing, your father never funded me at all. That was just an excuse to alleviate your guilt. Moreover, even if it were true, when you were at your most destitute, I stayed by your side without leaving. I helped you rebuild the hospital, restore your family's glory, and cared for you for a full decade. Shouldn't that be enough repayment? Jiang Wanqing stood petrified, shaking her head in disbelief as she shouted. You're lying. You're just trying to shirk responsibility. She's not in her right mind now. No matter how much I say to her, she'll either deliriously change the subject or try to force my surrender using past favors and affections. After all, this is how she's been apologizing for nearly a decade. Before we could continue, Yang Ziqian was taken away by the medical department. Jiang Wanqing kept resisting and was forced into compliance by the police. As she left, she viciously roared at me. Su Linchuan, are you really going to be this heartless? You'll regret this sooner or later. When they were finally taken away, the ward fell completely silent. The commotion had drawn a crowd of curious onlookers at the doorway, craning their necks to witness the drama. A family member wiped their tired tears and came to check on me. Dr. Su, are you all right? I shook my head, but the sweat on my forehead and my pale complexion betrayed me. The nurses turned their attention to me and soon discovered my bleeding wound. She screamed, unwrapped the gauze, and started bandaging me again. Dr. Su, you were supposed to be discharged today, but given the current situation, you should stay in the hospital for a few more days for observation. The wound had torn, injury compounding injury. I nodded and lay back on the hospital bed with the nurse's support. Looking up, I met the family member's gaze and lowered my head guiltily. I'm sorry. I couldn't protect her. When Jiang Wanqing stole the surgical plan and Yang Ziqian performed the operation, I had been comatose after the amputation surgery. By the time I woke up, the accident had already happened. Remembering the little girl's bright smile, my eyes gradually reddened. The family members shook their head. Dr. Su, you've already done enough. You're also a victim in this. The blame lies with Jiang Wanqing and Yang Ziqian, who operated drunk. They're the ones who killed Xiao Cheng. I believe the medical affairs department will clear your name and make those who made mistakes pay the price they deserve. After seeing off the family, the nurses looked at me with hesitant expressions. After wavering for a long time, they finally tentatively asked, Dr. Su, are you really married to Director Jia Ying? Though they'd overheard during my earlier argument with Jiang Wanqing. But given Jiang Wanqing's distant and cold attitude toward me over the past decade, they never could have imagined that two people showing absolutely no affection could be husband and wife, and married for 10 years at that. I nodded bitterly and shrugged. 10 years of marriage, certified genuine. The group immediately showed gossipy curiosity, wanting to ask, but not daring. However, since I'm usually approachable, they weren't scared of me, just worried about my feelings, restraining their questions. A nurse looked at my missing legs and asked with tear-reddened eyes, Dr. Su, did Jiang Wanqing really? Did she really drive over and crush your legs? You're the hospital's star doctor. For 10 whole years supporting this hospital, how many offered tenfold salaries to poach you? Yet you remained unmoved. How could she bear to hurt you like this? The nurses, all young women, were wiping tears from their eyes with emotional fragility. I had no choice but to recount the truth once more. When they heard the entire truth, they couldn't help but gather again to revile Jiang Wanqing. Dr. Su, such a wonderful husband like you. What others would beg to have? How could she be so ungrateful? Exactly, that Yang Ziqian, apart from pretending to be weak tea, in what way could he compare to your gentle and considerate nature? Jiang Wanqing must be blind. Divorce is good. For you, Dr. Su, divorce is true liberation. Listening to their endless prattling about marital relationship wisdom. Looking back on these 10 years, I've been completely bringing suffering upon myself. But I grew up in a happy, harmonious family where my parents always sacrificed for each other, so I naively believed that if I gave enough, eventually the other person would come around, fall in love with me, and treat me well. But I was wrong. Wrong from the very beginning. Jiang Wanqing didn't love me 10 years ago, and she doesn't love me now. After the nurses muttered and complained for a while, they returned to their work. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer friend. Since Jiang Wanqing refuses to agree to a peaceful divorce, we'll proceed with litigation. No matter how messy it gets, this divorce is happening. In the interrogation room, facing the police's questioning, Jiang Wanqing fidgeted irritably. I've told you. I never intended to kill him. He's my husband. What good would killing him do me? He just wouldn't listen, refused to hand over the proposal I wanted. I only meant to teach him a lesson, then take the proposal as a natural consequence. Besides, since when is disciplining my own husband any of your business? The police had already retrieved surveillance footage and all relevant evidence. Jiang Wanqing admitted to hitting me with her car, yet adamantly denied ever intending to kill me. She kept clamoring to see me, but with conclusive evidence and her own confession, these were sufficient to convict her. When my condition improved slightly, I went to see her. At the sight of me, she immediately tried invoking past favors again, though several days in custody had stripped her of previous arrogance. I spread the prepared documents on the table for her to see. Today's visit is precisely to present you with evidence. My parents died in an accident the year I graduated college. All my tuition from childhood was paid by them. My parents' salaries were quite decent. I never reached the point of needing subsidies to attend school. Jiang Wanqing frantically flipped through the documents I provided, visibly crumbling. I produced a stock transfer agreement. Back then, your father tried to lure me with stock options, but I declined. Jiang Wanqing, our marital bond ends here. If you want to resolve this amicably, you'll minimize complications. If not, the court will settle it. I stood up and left. Jiang Wanqing, who had been reeling from the shock, grew agitated when she saw me leave. Deprived of all leverage over me, she finally collapsed completely. She wept and begged. Lin Chuan, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please give me one more chance to make amends. I always thought you stayed with me out of obligation. I never realized you loved me this deeply. My lingering resentment kept me from opening my heart. Now that I know the truth, let's reconcile. Please. Her pleas were desperate. In the past, seeing her like this would have softened my heart enough to give another chance. But I knew. This wasn't remorse, just fear of incarceration. My steps never faltered. Seeing that I didn't even pause, Jiang Wanqing screamed desperately. Su Linchuan, whether you withdraw the case or not, I won't give up on you. I know you must think my regrets are just to avoid punishment, but that's really not the case. If you're still willing to give me another chance, after I get out, can we start over? I shook my head, not even turning back, responding coldly. No. She hurt me so deeply and took an innocent life. How dare she think I would forgive her? Whether she truly changed her mind or not, there's no possibility for us anymore. While recuperating at home, all matters came to their conclusions during this time. Yang Ziqian intentionally drank alcohol, leading to a patient's death, resulting not only in dismissal from the hospital, but also criminal court charges. Jiang Wanqing was complicit as an accomplice, additionally charged with intentional assault causing disability, unable to escape legal responsibility. Both ended up in prison. With everything settled, only our divorce remains unresolved. Jiang Wanqing refuses to divorce, and we're still litigating. Due to Jiang Wanqing's unscrupulous actions during the marriage, the divorce poses no problem. It's just a matter of time. Having endured 10 years of marriage, a little more waiting won't make a difference. On Xiaocheng's burial day, I attended the funeral in a wheelchair. The family members appeared even more haggard than before, their hair now streaked with strands of white. Standing before the tomb, I laid the flowers she loved most in life. The greatest danger of pancreatic cancer surgery lies in postoperative complications. Deaths on the operating table are rare. My treatment plan could have significantly improved her survival rate. But who could have anticipated? Yang Ziqian's venomous jealousy would cost her life in the most avoidable of circumstances. May her next life